Imagine meeting Joseph Stalin for the first time. You walk into his office expecting a ruthless dictator, but instead, you're greeted by a man who seems warm, charming, even fatherly. He leans in when you speak, his eyes locked on yours, making you feel as though you're the most important person in the room. He puts his arm around you, walks you to the door, and suddenly, you feel bonded to him forever. But behind this warmth was something far darker. This wasn't affection. It was a trap. This is the story of how Joseph Stalin, one of history's most feared tyrants, used charm, paranoia, and terror to turn friends into enemies, and enemies into corpses. In the early years of his rule, Stalin seemed almost approachable compared to other Soviet leaders. He insisted people use the informal you in Russian, even junior officials. He cracked jokes, sang folk songs, told earthy stories. To many, he felt like the revolution embodied, rough, simple, and undeniably human. People left his office anxious to see him again. They thought they'd been welcomed into the inner circle. And that was Stalin's greatest skill, making people feel safe while quietly tightening the noose. Enter Sergey Kirov, Stalin's closest friend after his wife's suicide in 1932. Kirov was warm, likable, and dangerously popular. Too popular. In 1934, regional leaders approached Kirov with a bold offer: overthrow Stalin, and they'd make him premier. Kirov refused and told Stalin everything. At first, Stalin thanked him. But then something changed. His warmth toward Kirov cooled. Stalin now knew the truth. Someone inside his circle was more loved than him. Kirov tried desperately to prove his loyalty, praising Stalin endlessly in public speeches. But the harder he tried, the more suspicious Stalin became. Old jokes Kirov had made about Stalin now felt like daggers. That December, Kirov was gunned down outside his office. Officially, Stalin wasn't linked, but few doubted his hand in it. And that was the beginning. After Kirov's death came the Great Purge, the brutal unraveling of Stalin's inner circle. Friends who once laughed with him now vanished. One by one, Stalin's top lieutenants were arrested, tortured, and forced to confess to crimes they hadn't committed. What's chilling isn't just the bloodshed, it's Stalin's delight in it. He listened eagerly to reports of once brave men breaking down, begging for their lives, crawling on their knees. He laughed at their humiliation. This wasn't politics. It was theater. Stalin enjoyed watching loyalty turn to fear, and fear turn to ruin. Outwardly, Stalin appeared modest. He scolded those who suggested public tributes, insisting no one man should be glorified. But soon his face was everywhere. Newspapers sang his praises. Planes flew in formation spelling out his name. And when he spoke in public, his words were law, even his mistakes. If Stalin mispronounced a word, everyone after him had to repeat it the same way. To correct him was to risk death. Stalin wasn't just a man anymore. He was turning himself into a god. As Hitler's invasion loomed, Stalin micromanaged every detail of the Soviet war effort. He berated his generals, accusing them of laziness. Yet those same generals knew they were trapped. Contradict him, and you risk execution. Agree with him too eagerly, and you looked like a sycophant. "What's the point of talking to you?" he once shouted. "Whatever I say, you reply." "Yes, Comrade Stalin, wise decision, Comrade Stalin." Even his best generals were fired. He obsessed over details as small as the size of bayonets. To survive, his officers developed an art form, reading Stalin's moods. Look him in the eye, but not too long. Take notes, but not too many. Disagree occasionally, but not enough to anger him. It wasn't just politics, it was a game of life and death. Perhaps the most nightmarish glimpse into Stalin's mind came after the war. He began hosting frequent late-night gatherings at his dacha. Outwardly, they looked like comradely parties, drinking, laughter, movies. But beneath the surface, they were pure psychological torture. Stalin drank lightly watered-down alcohol while forcing his lieutenants to drink heavily. He watched as they grew drunk, sloppy, and terrified of saying the wrong thing. And then came the worst part, the dancing. Stalin would order them onto the floor. Nikita Khrushchev, the future Soviet premier, was forced to perform the exhausting Gopak dance until he was sick. Others were paired off for slow dances while Stalin laughed. Hysterically. In these moments, he wasn't just their leader. He was the puppet master, pulling strings, humiliating powerful men until they looked like children. So, what happened to the man who once seemed so warm, so approachable? Maybe Stalin was always this way. Maybe the charm was only ever a mask, a weapon to disarm those around him. Because in the end, his greatest pleasure wasn't power itself. It was control, the ability to raise a man up, only to crush him when he least expected it. To make even his closest friends dance like puppets in his living room. Joseph Stalin didn't just rule the Soviet Union. He ruled fear itself. If you found this story chilling, imagine living in Stalin's shadow, never knowing if tonight's dinner party might be your last. This has been the story of Joseph Stalin, the puppet master of power.